Good morning and welcome to the last webinar in our series on sanitary and phytosanitary issues. These webinars are organized by the European Cooperative Programme for Plant Genetic Resources on behalf of our partners in the Generous Bridge project, the European Forest and Animal Genetic Resources Network, EUGENA and ERFP. The webinars are in preparation for an upcoming workshop on phytosanitary barriers for genetic resources and provide relevant background on existing regulations and initiatives on plant and animal health. One of the main goals of the Generous Bridge project is to harness collaboration and knowledge transfer among the plant, forest, and animal genetic resources domains with an aim to strengthen conservation and sustainable use of genetic resources. In the previous webinars, we first heard about the EU plant health law, which regulates the import into and movement within the European Union of plants and plant products, including germplasm. We also heard about the Green Pass initiative of the CGIAR Genebanks, which aims at creating a quality assurance system for gene banks to facilitate material exchange. Today's webinar will provide some information on specific provisions for gene banks within existing EU animal health regulations. First, again, a few practical things. Today's webinar will again be recorded and made available on the workshop website. The presentation will be around 20 minutes with some time for questions afterwards. You can write your questions again into the chat box or raise your hand if you wish to speak after the talk. Today's speaker is Fernando Tejerina from the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Environment of Spain, where he is responsible, among other things, for the development and coordination of germinal products regulation. He represents Spain in the European Commission's expert group on germinal products and is the chair of the ex situ conservation working group of the European Regional Focal Point for Animal Genetic Resources. Over to you, Fernando, and we look forward to hearing about your possibilities in animal health regulation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. First of all, I would like to acknowledge on behalf of the Minister of Agriculture of Spain and also on behalf of the European Regional Focal Point for Animal Genetic Resources, the invitation from the European Cooperative Program on Plant Genetic Resources to this interesting webinars previous to your workshop on. Sorry, I have not seen the presentation. Could I have the possibility to show my presentation on my screen?
Yes, we see it. Thank you.
Because I'm not watching my presentation in my screen. I only watching myself in my computer. Can I switch off my camera, please?
Of course, if that works better, please.
Now I'm watching my presentation. Sandra, can you confirm me that you are watching my presentation?
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Okay, please. Thank you. Sorry. I think this is a very interesting opportunity to share our experience, and Sandra had introduced me brilliantly, and I only want to say the things that I am not. I am not a GenBank manager. I am not a researcher. I'm an official with responsibilities and tasks in the public management of the animal genetic resources, and I work overall in the development of regulation and subsidies. I am going to divide my presentation in 5 different items. The first one, I'm going to introduce what type of materials are stored in animal genetic resource bank and what are their implications for the animal health and also for human health in case that this disease are zoonosis. For this implication in the animal and human health, we have regulation and recommendation on the movement of these germinal products at the European international and national level. All of these regulations have a set of common elements that I'm going to explain you in the item 3, and some of these elements are obstacles for the gem banking of endangered breeds. But thanks to the work of the expert groups, and also thanks to the DG Sante in the European Commission, we have a new animal health regulation on germinal products that establishes exceptions for the movement in case of germinal products from gem banks. And finally, in item 5, I'm going to explain you what can be the role of the European gem bank network for animal genetic resources under this new regulation. My first item is what are the types of material stored in gem banks in the animal genetic resource domain. We have two groups of materials. The first group are the germinal products. These germinal products are the male gamete, the spermatozoa, the female gamete, the oocyte, and the first step of the development after the fecundation, the embryo. These three types of material are stored in the named reproductive gem banks. We can store the three types of material, but the vast majority of the collection around the world store spermatozoa because it's the material easier to collect and easier to store. The common handicap for the development of gem bank with these three types of material is the temperature of storage. This is 186 Celsius degree under zero, and these are the most common materials stored in gem banks. The other group of material stored in gem banks is non-reproductive material, are somatic cells, DNA. In theory and also in practical, the somatic cells can be used for reproductive uses by clonation, but there are a lot of concerns about this technology, and is forbidden or limited in all European countries. And we are going to focus in the first group of material, in germinal products. These germinal products are also the most common material used in the breeding worldwide, because by the using is the best way to disseminate the genetic improvement rates in the selection programs. These materials are really easy to collect from the best donor, and then use widely in the population. For example, in the case of bulls, from only one bull we can obtain 100,000 of semen doses that then are going to use in the population. These materials, these germinal products, are a very good way to disseminate the genetic improvement, but are also a source for the dissemination of disease in a lot of number of animals. These germinal products have obviously a biological hazard, and this biological hazard determines that we have regulation to avoid this hazard. Only for your interest, in the ex situ conservation working group developed the last year a survey to identify gem banks in Europe. In total, we can identify 125 collections. 44 were reproductive gem bank, only 19 genomic gem bank, and 40 gem bank store both types of material. As I said before, the most frequent material used in gem bank, storage in gem bank, is reproductive germinal products. Now we are going to explain what are the regulation or recommendation at the international, European, and national level. In this slide, I try to represent in view the description of in the market in germinal products around the world. The exchanges are between northern countries and between northern countries to southern countries. This is explained because the genetic improvement is rich in the northern countries and is exported between them and to the southern countries. But at regional level, for example, at European level, and also in each state, there is an intense market in germinal products, mainly in dairy cattle sector and in pork sector, where millions of semen doses are produced and used per year. To avoid the biological hazards that comes from this germinal product, we have recommendations at international level. This recommendation comes from the World Animal Health Organization in its Terrestrial Animal Health Code, and from the International Embryo Technology Society. This recommendation establishes animal derogations, and this animal derogation establishes a derogation on animal health, and this animal health derogation are the basis for the bilateral agreement between countries. In theory, the epidemiological status of the countries are the base to negotiate these agreements, but sometimes these animal health derogations are used to establish obstacles in function of the interests of the import country. At European level, we have a more satisfactory situation because we have the European Animal Health Regulation, which establishes the derogation to the exchange of material between member states. And we have also regulation at the national level. Each state have their own regulation to control this hazard, to this biological hazard in the exchange of germinal products inside its territory. But we have a common element. The regional legislation and the national legislation is based in the recommendation of the international organization from the World Animal Health Organization and International Embryo Technology Society. And this regulation have a set of common elements. And I'm going to try to explain why these common elements are obstacles for the gene banking of endangered breeds. The common elements of the three levels of regulation are, the first one is only germinal products collected, processed, and stored in centers approved by a state can be sent to the territory of other states. In this regulation, there are also requirements about animal health, status of the farm and territory of the origin of the donors. The farm and territories must be have a free status of several common diseases. We have also rules for the admittance of the donors of germinal products for its collection. These rules demands quarantine periods and tests about different disease in the quarantine. And we have also have requirements about the animal health status of the donors in the center, the structure and performance requirements, traceability, and also it's very relevant that all of these centers must to be under the control of the authorities. This set of common elements ensure an excellent biosecurity status of the germinal products collected under this procedure, but this procedure is time-consuming, is really expensive, and it was so for mainstream breeds as Holstein Friesian, where the investments that we need to fulfill all the requirements can be compensated by the benefits of the trade of safety products. In fact, the most frequent collections in the gene banks in the animal genetic resource domain comes from these mainstream breeds and not from endangered breeds. This is counterintuitive, but it is the situation that was caused by this regulation. And hope these elements are an obstacle for gene banking. Here you have a picture of a Cardena andaluza breed. It's a critical endangered breed in Spain that had in the past a lot of problems to be GEMBanking their germinal products. And what are the reasons? The first reason is that the donors have to be moved from the farms to the centers authorized by the member states. In that case, this is not very easy when the animals have a feral behavior, and also for the tradition and other cultural reasons, the owners don't want to send their animals to these centers. In second place, farms breeding these endangered breeds don't fulfill the animal health requirement, because our less professional farmings are grazing farms with less biosecurity, and also are less productive farms, have also less investment, and in general poor health programs. As a consequence of this, it's frequent that animal donors from these endangered breeds do not fulfill the admittance rules, and also the quarantine centers are very expensive for these animals, because they have a very low economical value and produce few germinal products. As I explained before, a bull from a Holstein Friesian can produce 100,000 of semen doses for the market, but we only need 1 or 2 ejaculates, around 500 semen doses for the GEMBanking of 1 donor. As we explained also, we need the collection needs a complex procedures, and the investment is always think in whole donor to produce big amount of germinal products. And for centers managers, the donors from endangered breeds, and in some cases annoyance. Also in relation with traceability and certification requirements, the procedures were developed focus in collect big amount of germinal products. And finally, these centers must to be under the control of the authorities, and for the managers of the centers, the donors from an endangered breeds are a risk for the status of these centers, are also an annoyance. But this breed needs the GEMBanking more than the Main Street breeds. We are lucky in our domain because we have at least an alternative to allow the collection of an exchange of germinal products of these endangered breeds. This alternative is in the Commission Delegated Regulation 2020/186 for the movement of germinal products between the Union, that is going to get into force in April of this year, and establish an exception for GEMBanks. Have different elements. The first element is a definition. For first time, we have a regulation that acknowledges the specific status of these facilities, and this starts with a definition of GEMBank, that means a repository of animal genetic material for ex situ conservation and sustainable use of genetic resources, held by host institution, authorized or recognized by the competent authorities. And this is the first important element. The GEMBanks have to be authorized or recognized to fulfill these activities, the ex situ conservation and the sustainable use of genetic resources. The second element is established in Article 45. Here is established the exception in the main derogations. It's on the base that the competent authority of the member state of origin of the germinal products must to allow the movement of germinal products to other member states if the GEMBank in origin have reached a prior written consent from the competence authorities in the member state of destination. This exception is only applicable to endangered breeds and animal in suits, but for us is the most important animals are the endangered breeds. And the competent authority in the member state of destination must to be ensure that the germinal products are going to be used for situ conservation and sustainable use, and have sufficient information to prevent the spread of any listed disease, and especially to prevent the spread of foot and mouth disease and infection with rinderpest. In Article 46, we have other element of this section is the self-declaration. This self-declaration has to be accompanied the germinal products during the transport, and it's a responsibility of the GenBank in origin. In this self-declaration, at least have to collect the next information, the name and address of the consignor and the consignee, the name and address of the place of dispatch and the place of destination. We have a derogation for the germinal products intended to move to a specific type of establishment, that is processing establishment. Have to collect also information about the type of germinal products and the species of the donor animals, the number of straws or the package in the consignment to be dispatched, information about the identification in relation with the marking applied to the straws and package, and the plate and date of their collection and production, and also information about the previous disease that I have explained you in the before slide. And the final element, the GenBank in origin have to make an advance notification to their competence authority in relation with the intended movement of those germinal products. I try to describe in brief this process. We only want to move germinal products from the origin GenBank to the destination GenBank, and for reach this, the origin GenBank have to ask for a written consent to the destination competent authority. This competent authority in destination shall ask for information about the health status to the the origin member state. With this information, they need also information about the correct use of the germinal products in their territory. For do this, is supposed that is going to ask to the destination GenBank, and with this information, the competent authority in destination give the written consent. With this written consent, the origin GenBank send this written consent to the competent authority in origin. This competent authority grant a derogation, and with this derogation, the origin GenBank can't make the advance notification and then make the movement with the self-declaration. But all of this process needs a previous state that depends of the regulation in origin, because we need that each state allows the collection and storage of germinal products in the origin GenBank with different requirements of the set that you said before. We need that each member state must develop and establish a specific derogation in the national, not in the regional, in the national animal health regulation, to allow the collection and storage of germinal products in GenBank. And finally, what can be the role of our European GenBank network for animal genetic resource under this new regulation? This network, the main objective are support ex situ conservation and sustainable use. As you can see, it's the same functions that the regulation, the new regulation demands for the GenBanks to allow the exception. This network operates under the umbrella of the EFP, and the EUGENA GenBank members must be recognized or authorized by the member state. Is the same requirement also that in the regulation 2020-886. And EUGENA could be the database or reference for the properly development of this derogation, because in this network we can identify the GEMBanks that can be used this exception. Nowadays we have 10 countries on board. Some information about more than 100,000 samples. To finalize the conclusion, as I said you before, we have to acknowledge the work of the European Commission and DG Sante, because for the first time the specific status of GenBank has been acknowledged in the European Animal Health Regulation. This derogation is going to have a positive and direct effect in the conservation, obviously mainly in the ex situ conservation of transboundary breeds. This is the breeds that are in more than one country, and is going to allow the coordination between the GenBanks. But now the next step is each member state of the European Union should copy the exception in their national animal health regulation. We have made this work in Spain previously, and we have collected very good results with an increase in the number of endangered breeds with collection as the Carden Andalusa that I have presented during the presentation. And finally, obviously, the application in practice must be defined and adapted to its epidemiological situation and breed conservation status. We need a balance between the protection of the animal health and human health and the conservation of our genetic resources. Thank you very much for your attention. Don't forget to follow us in our social medias in the EFP, and I'm ready for your questions.
Thank you very much, Fernando. That was a very interesting presentation, and we see a lot of commonalities, but also challenges in how to implement your regulations. So let me just remind participants that you can either put your questions into the question chat or even raise your hand, and we'll give you speaking rights. The first comment was from Coralie Danchon, and I guess it's more of a comment than a question, where she says that there is also sometimes a behavior problem, that breeds cannot be as tame as the, I guess, commercially intensively bred ones, and therefore it's difficult to collect the males using standard protocols. If you want to comment on that, perhaps. Fernando, you still there? Okay, we have a second question from Willem van Dooyewaert, who's a plant gene bank curator. And so his question is movement of untested material only allowed between gene banks in EU member states and not from gene banks to users? So how is that regulated in this regulation? Fernando. Oh. I see he seems to be offline.
Sandra, can you
Yes.
write him, contact him on another platform to rejoin?
Yes, I think I apologize. He seems to be offline. If maybe someone of the attendees within the animal field would like to comment on this question, please, I'll try to reach out to Fernando to have him rejoin. All right, I apologize for this difficulty. Yeah, so we seem to have lost our panelist. We can perhaps give him a minute to see if we can reconnect. Again, does anybody perhaps want to comment on Willem's question about whether this movement is allowed between only gene banks or also between gene banks and final users? Okay. Oh, Eva, maybe? Let me give you speaking rights. Franco, can you help me? Please. Franco, can you help me give speaking rights to Eva, please?
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I guess now I can be heard. My name is Eva Kamara and I work for G2 in DG Sante, it's animal health. And this is in fact this regulation 686 is the one that is under responsibility of my unit. And for the question if this is a possibility to move germinal products also to the user, not only from a gene bank to a gene bank, it's not possible. Those provisions are constructed in this way to avoid, in fact, the spread of animal diseases. And as it was said, those germinal products which are in gene banks are not to the same standards as standard germinal products which are collected by teams or at the centers, and then therefore it's much safer to move them between gene banks, and then they could be sourced from a gene bank for national use. So this was this way of thinking while constructing those provisions. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Eva, for jumping in. And Fernando, I see you're back. Sorry, we lost you for a moment. So Eva was responding to Willem's question. I don't know if you have anything to add or if there's any other questions from the audience.
Sorry, Sandra, I lost my connection just in the moment that I finished my presentation, but I have her now, Eva, and Eva was one of the responsible from the Commission. And obviously, thank you, Eva, for all your support to the animal genetic resource domain to allow this exchange of material only between gene banks and only for the purposes of ex situ conservation and sustainable use of endangered breeds. And for this reason, I think the question was in this sense, is not allowed, for example, for mainstream breeds. For these germinal products from the normal products, they have to fulfill the same requirements that before, but the legislation it was so thinking in this kind of mainstream breeds, not in endangered breeds, and now we have an exception for the most endangered breeds in Europe.
Thank you very much. So if basically this regulation makes sure that gene banks have access to other gene banks material, but then they would be able to also distribute to users based on a different set of national laws. Is that how I would understand it? Okay. Thank you very much. Is there any other questions from our audience, perhaps? If not, then I really wanted to thank you and all other panelists again for participating in our webinar series. And I think that all of them, their input will be very valuable for our discussions in the upcoming workshop for on phytosanitary barriers for plant genetic resources, where we will maybe discuss potential approaches to including gene bank provisions into these kind of regulations for plant health. Thank you again for your time, and again, I will make this presentation available to everybody on the website, and if you want to have the presentation, we can probably also make that available to you. Thank you very much. Have a lovely day.
Thank you, Sandra, for your invitation.